In 1996, DC and Marvel Comics came together for an intercompany crossover that pit the heroes of each publisher against each other, in a massive spectacle simply called DC vs. Marvel, or Marvel vs. DC. They actually alternated which name got to go first on each cover. The event promised epic battles like Superman vs. the Hulk, Batman vs. Captain America, Green Lantern vs. Silver Surfer, the mighty Thor vs. the power of Shazam, and all the while, a pair of cosmic beings watched over the chaos, with the intention of erasing whichever universe lost the most battles. As a last, desperate attempt to save both universes, Marvel and DC were merged together, forming a new Amalgam Universe. In April of 1996, DC and Marvel co-published 12 one-shots under the Amalgam Comics brand, exploring this new reality through the adventures of characters like Spider-Boy, Darkclaw, and the JLX. The initiative was so popular that a year later, they published a second wave of 12 one-shots that revisited popular characters from the first wave while also introducing some new ones. Iron Lantern number 1 came out on June of 1997 as part of that second wave. Iron Lantern number 1, written by Kurt Busiek and drawn by Paul Smith, with inks by Al Williamson, Andrew Peepoy, Greg Adams, Bob MacLeod, Tom Palmer, Al Milgrom, and Paul Smith. Colors are by Christy Chenille and Digital Chameleon, with letters by Richard Starkings, Comic Craft, and Albert Deschenais. The story is titled Showdown at Stark Aircraft. The issue opens with Hal Stark, the Iron Lantern, flying through space with the villainous Hector, the highly evolved creature totally oriented on revenge. Iron Lantern is transporting Hector to Oa the Living Planet, where he'll be imprisoned. He takes a moment to visit the Central Battery and ponder the mysteries of Oa, and what connection they may have to the World War II era hero known as the Human Lantern. But there's no time to dwell on that now, since Hal is already running late. Back on Earth, Stark Aircraft has reached a pivotal moment in their government contract, and test pilot Pepper Ferris is showing off their new experimental plane for a US senator. Unfortunately for Pepper, the plane has been sabotaged, and the controls stop responding once she's in the air. Lucky for her, Hal running late means that Iron Lantern shows up just in time to catch the plane before it can crash. The Senator is furious at Stark's inability to deliver a functional aircraft, and says Hal must have been crazy to entrust such an important flight to a female pilot, which pisses Pepper off, especially since the Senator is her father. She storms off, and the Senator sends one of his lackeys to go bring her back. But that lackey just happens to be Kyle O'Brien, the man who once filled in for Iron Lantern when Hal Stark was unavailable, saving the day as the Green Guardsman. Ever since that day, Kyle's dreamt of being the hero again, and would do anything to stop being treated like a nobody. So instead of chasing after Pepper, he searches the grounds, looking for the technology that can make him into the Green Guardsman once again. Pepper, however, runs into a mysterious gemstone that engulfs her body and tampers with her mind, transforming her once more into the villainous Madame Sapphire, who promptly uses her power to summon the massive mechanical monster known as Great White, who immediately begins tearing up the Stark compound. Hal suits up as fast as he can and jumps into the fray, but he can't fight Madame Sapphire and Great White at the same time, so he puts a construct booster rocket on Great White's back and shoots it into space. While Iron Lantern is struggling to stop Great White from simply flying back down to Earth, Madame Sapphire kidnaps the Senator and flies away with him across the desert. At that moment, Hal's two friends and confidants, Happy Kalmaku and Stuart Rhodes, go to check on the power battery, since Hal's battle with Great White is using a tremendous amount of energy and overtaxing the system. But Kyle was right behind them and tries knocking them out so he can steal the battery. At the worst possible moment, Kyle disconnects the battery, leaving Iron Lantern's armor with nothing but reserve power. With no other option, Iron Lantern flies into Great White's mouth and uses the last of his power to explode the robot from the inside. But with no power left, Iron Lantern falls to Earth like a shooting star, bracing for an impact that will surely kill him. Meanwhile, on the dark side of the moon, the mastermind behind all of these seemingly random events watches his plan come together. His name is Mandarin Estro, and he's out to destroy everyone and everything connected to Oa. So that's Iron Lantern number 1, and I have to say, it's a pretty fun issue. They pack a lot in here, but the story is simple enough that it leaves plenty of room for all the characters and subplots necessary to make this feel like a middle chapter of an ongoing story. As a Green Lantern fan, it was interesting to see how mixing in elements from Iron Man changed the relationships we're used to. Most notably how it flips the usual Hal Jordan-Carol Ferris relationship dynamic by putting Hal Stark in charge of Stark Aircraft with Pepper Ferris as his employee and test pilot, forcing Hal to be the responsible one since he has his company to think about. Ironically, the amalgamation gimmick that this entire concept is based on is both the strongest and weakest thing about the issue. Iron Lantern is a simple idea that works really well. Vintage Iron Man armor with Green Lantern embellishments makes for a good design. Iron Lantern is a good name, and both of those examples benefit from taking a very basic surface level approach to combining two different things into one. The problem is they took that exact same approach with everyone and everything else in the issue, and seeing that much of it really exposes the weakness of the concept. We've got Oa the Living Planet combining Ego the Living Planet with the planet Oa. The Weaponers of AIM combining AIM with the Weaponers of Quard. Hector, an amalgam of Hector Hammond and MODOK. The Human Lantern of World War II, most likely a combination of the Golden Age Green Lantern Alan Scott and the original Human Torch. Pepper Ferris, a mix of Pepper Potts and Carol Ferris. Stuart Rhodes, a combination of John Stewart and Jim War Machine Rhodes. Happy Kalmaku, a combination of Happy Hogan and Tom Kalmaku. Madame Sapphire, a combination of Madame Mask and Star Sapphire. And probably the worst one, Mandarin Estro, an amalgam of the Mandarin and Sinestro. That isn't even all of them. The list goes on, with very few of them being all that good, and absolutely none of them work as well as the titular Iron Lantern. Despite my complaints, they put in a tremendous effort to make this issue feel like a piece of a much longer run. An interesting thing to note about the Amalgam one-shots is that, even though they're labeled as issue number 1, they're all written as though they take place in the middle of a series with years of continuity. Characters will constantly reference past adventures, and those references are backed up with editor's notes pointing you towards back issues that don't exist. It actually really confused me as a kid, because I read the issue of Spider-Boy that was in the first round of one-shots, and I was convinced that there were all of these other Spider-Boy comics out there. I believed that the only reason I couldn't find them was that my local comic shop just didn't happen to have any of the back issues. And it got even worse a year later, when a second Spider-Boy comic was released as part of the second wave of one-shots, confirming my belief that there must in fact be more Spider-Boy comics out there, and I just had to keep looking until I found them. Between editor's notes and a letters page, this issue makes reference to enough amalgamated villains to fill Iron Lantern's rogues gallery, as well as at least 33 issues of Iron Lantern stories that all took place before this one. Most of those issues were in Showcase of Suspense, an amalgam of DC's Showcase series where the Silver Age Green Lantern first appeared, and the Marvel series Tales of Suspense where Iron Man first appeared. Iron Lantern is said to be originally created by Archie Broom and Gil Heck, combining the creators of Hal Jordan, Gil Kane and John Broom, with Iron Man creators Don Heck and Archie Goodwin. The letters page also plays up the mystery of the Human Lantern, a hero who was active during World War II. As I said before, the name and time period likely mean he's a combination of Alan Scott and the original Human Torch, which makes even more sense when you think about the fact that the original Human Torch was an android, and Iron Lantern is a technology-based hero. There's a passing mention of a Universe 2, which would be their Earth 2 equivalent. And they even point out that readers can catch a glimpse of the Human Lantern in Super Soldier Man of War number 1, which is in fact an issue in the second wave of Amalgam one-shots that takes place in the 1940s and shows us a couple panels of the Human Lantern. Nobody wants to eat the gross cake he baked with magic fire. It's sad. But I can't understate what they achieved here. They figured out how to use a few well-placed comments and references to imply the existence of an interconnected shared universe spanning decades. And none of it is real. It is legitimately impressive how committed they were to this idea, and it really shows in the immersive quality of the final product. Now, there is one final thing you should know about Iron Lantern number 1, and that is the fact that everything we've talked about today is canon. In 2022, DC published a one-shot titled Dark Crisis Big Bang number 1, a story about Barry Allen, the Flash, following up on the Dark Crisis event that had just ended. Before the crisis, Barry had been exploring the multiverse, trying his best to catalog every new world he came across, and Big Bang number 1 shows us the list Barry's compiled so far. Near the end of the list, we see Earth 1996, mysterious amalgamated heroes, requires further investigation. Remember, 1996 was the year the first wave of Amalgam one-shots were published. And just like that, Iron Lantern and the entire Amalgam Universe lives on, somehow, as part of the DC multiverse. Does that mean we'll get to see these characters again and continue following their adventures? Honestly, it's not very likely. Crossovers like that were hard enough to do when it was just Marvel and DC that had to cooperate, but now both of their parent companies would have to get on board and agree to let someone else share some amount of control over their billion-dollar properties. And I have a very hard time imagining it happening the way things are right now. What I do think we could eventually see is some brave artist sneaking in an Amalgam Comics cameo next time there's a group shot of characters from across the multiverse. They could never be part of the story, but they could still be there for anyone who knows what to look for. So that's the story of the Iron Lantern. What do you think of Green Lantern and Iron Man having their mythologies merged like this? Did you read any of the Amalgam Comics one-shots? What's your favorite amalgamated character? Tell me about it in the comments section down below, and while you're down there, remember to hit the like button if you enjoyed this video. And to make sure you see more videos like this, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. I've got a lot more content like this coming, and you won't want to miss it. But for now, let me just say thank you for taking the time to watch. My name is Dan, we'll talk again soon.